Hi, everyone. My name is Rohit Garwal, and I'm a partner here at Object Edge. And good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us from wherever you may be here in the United States or anywhere around the world. And I'm really excited in a way to talk to you today about a topic that's really been pushed to the forefront, if it wasn't already, and that's how can we take on as businesses e-commerce and take it on well and take it on really fast. I say that I'm excited to be talking to you in a little bit of tongue-in-cheek fashion, because I know this is a really difficult time for a lot of enterprises right now. So what we did was we put this together actually relatively quickly, and it's really targeted for companies that have over 500 employees who've seen their sales teams grounded because of social distancing and call centers being overwhelmed, and either your digital channel isn't servicing your needs to the best ability that you think it should, or you don't have a digital channel right now because you were caught unaware. For these companies, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, I want to talk to you about how you can now launch a pretty good e-commerce channel in about 2 weeks and for a fraction of the cost what you might think you would have had to spend. And I also want to provide some guidance on how you can manage your operations after you've launched. So this is purely informational. There's a lot of great things happening from a lot of different companies out there, such as Commerce Tools, ElasticPath, Oracle, Salesforce. These companies are doing a lot, not only from a technology perspective, but they're doing a lot from a pricing perspective, given the times that everyone's in. And there are some new advancements that have been happening on where you can leverage these platforms in a really powerful way, really, really quickly. A quick housekeeping note before we begin that you can always ask questions in the Q&A. At the same time, at the end, we'll be sharing some email addresses. So if you think of something later and you want to ask a question, please do feel free to reach out. We feel that we're in a unique position. We've been doing e-commerce for about 20 years, and we're in a unique position to really help answer questions. And that's really what this is all about. We're trying to do our part, share as much information as possible, and hopefully help some of you that are maybe going through some really difficult times right now. All right. So I want to set the stage in that we're in April 2020, and the world's been hit by a pandemic, and the business reality of January 2020 might be a little bit different and are different in April 2020. But I like to not be a prisoner of the moment and really think about what does success look like if we're talking about e-commerce, but even in our businesses. And I do think that the definition of success has not changed. And when we talk about success, what we're really talking about is meeting the needs of our customers and, if possible, exceeding them. It just so happens, though, in April 2020, what meeting the needs of our customers might be radically changing, and it might mean us adapting to what I was mentioning earlier, that we now have our primary lines of communications with our customers, if we're manufacturers or distributors, being our sales teams, which are now grounded and they can't visit, and our call centers, which were meant to take on a specific volume, are now taking on a much greater volume and might not have the expertise to be able to answer the questions that are needed. And that rapid shock that's happened, it's been 30 days, has thrown a lot of businesses out of whack. So then, if we're talking about solving those kinds of problems, let's specifically talk about what success looks like in the context of e-commerce. And really what we're talking about here is what are those experiences that you can realistically deliver quickly to your customers in such a short time frame, and a broad understanding of the costs. So I'm going to go more into the details on the guidelines of e-commerce success here in a second. But if you take away anything from today's conversation, it's that I think you need to think differently about what launching an e-commerce channel means. We need to start thinking about week-sized chunks out of our problems, not the typical year-sized chunks. And so when I mean that, and we take a look at e-commerce in the past, we've been doing it, like I said, a long time. And for enterprises, again, these companies, mid-sized to enterprise companies that have over 500 people, e-commerce has been this project that has been something that we get a lot of buy-in on. We get all our stakeholders together, and we dedicate a lot of CapEx toward it. Today's business climate doesn't really afford us that luxury. We need to move quickly. There's no time to engage a task force and do that long-term company road mapping. Our customers need to talk to us. Our customers need to engage with us. And the reality of today is that we have to get them something so they can. Otherwise, they may go somewhere else because their spends are limited. So if they're reaching out to us and we're a critical supplier in their supply chain, we can't afford to let them down right now. So success today has a completely different definition. And I think we need to have a near-term, low-risk focus but being pragmatic and understanding that anything that we do today, we're hoping will last us in the medium and long term. And then I do want to call out one thing as well, and that when we talk about launching an e-commerce channel in 2 weeks, we're not really talking about eliminating the cost of an e-commerce channel. We're talking about breaking it up into smaller chunks. So if you're going to be spending X on your e-commerce over the next 2 years, you're still going to be spending X over the next 2 years. What we're really talking about is if you could divide X by 24, can you get anything out in 1/24 of the cost, and then plan on spending it in incremental chunks. So I don't have a magic pill here where e-commerce all of a sudden becomes free and operating it is really easy. The guidelines I'm trying to provide are really ones of, are you aware of modern technology trends so that you can launch something that's relatively really good and can meet the needs of your customers, and it can be done quickly. All right, so then let's take a look at that, right? So to do this right, I think we really need to address 3 big challenges for all of us in the manufacturing and distribution world. Number one, we need to figure out how to ruthlessly prioritize what experiences we're okay with launching. We're not going to get everything, but we can get a lot of great stuff now because of the way these technology platforms have progressed. Number two, I think there has to be a conversation about which customers you're launching to. And that means another way of saying that is you're not going to launch to all your customers probably. If we're going to be launching an e-commerce channel with a very focused set of experiences, I think it's realistic to also talk about which customers are we realistically focusing on, so that they are getting what they need. Because right now, again, if you're in a position where you have no e-commerce channel or a channel that's not functioning well, anything's better than what you have right now. And I'm not saying that as you're going to launch something really bad. I'm just saying that even being able to support 20% of your customers better than you're doing now is a win for your business. And finally, we have to be operationally ready. You don't want to launch a platform and then not be ready for what comes afterwards. And I'm going to give you some pointers on that. So let's start there, because I think that's sometimes the hardest part for a lot of manufacturers and distributors is that haven't traditionally had an e-commerce channel, or what are some of those gotchas? What are the things that we should be looking at? And so I want to repeat first what I said earlier, that this changing paradigm and being able to launch quickly helps you space out your costs and drive ROI faster. It doesn't really necessarily change how much ROI you're getting. And that goes back to if you're spending X, you still should plan on spending X. Also, there does seem to be a myth with a lot of first-time e-commerce leveragers that think that e-commerce is a magical cure for cost. It's really not. Running an e-commerce channel oftentimes has the same margin impact on as your traditional channel, just in different areas. So if you were a net 10% margin business before e-commerce, you're probably still going to net out at a net 10% business after your initial costs and maybe an initial burst in usage. E-commerce doesn't make you into a net 50% gross margin business. All right, so what does operationally ready mean? E-commerce is a legitimate channel of business, and that's going to have legitimate ongoing CapEx and OpEx costs. So first I want to give you some kind of rules of thumb so you can budget against it. So traditionally what we've seen is distributors run a 3 to 5% net margin business, and manufacturers that are run well run a traditional net 10% margin business. Distributors running more on volume and manufacturers running more on throughput. And that means as you transition to e-commerce, those ratios are going to remain approximately the same, but your costs are going to be structured a little differently. So as a good rule of thumb, we think that most B2B e-commerce channels that have reached a certain leveling of run rate maturity should plan on spending about 10% of gross on your OpEx, your licensing, your infrastructure, everything that it takes to run your channel that doesn't have to do with product or fulfillment. And so that's a good point. We're not really talking about fulfillment here because that's a totally different beast, and companies have such different fulfillment models based on where your warehouses are and the size of your shipment that fulfillment is just a very unique per business case. But I would say from the thought process of what commerce platform you're buying, what kind of licensing fees you're paying, what you're paying your partners to run the channel, your operational expenses. When I talk about operational expenses, I'm really talking about who's monitoring your channel, who's looking at your analytics, who's supporting it in case there's a bug, who's handling support tickets in case somebody doesn't know how to do something, who's enhancing your channel, right? Building out better integration, providing new features, all those things that need to happen. And there's specific names for these, right? Product owners, developers, merchandisers, marketers, analytics. All these roles need to happen, and they need to happen at a certain level of maturity as your e-commerce platform gets more mature. But you still have to do some level of it. So if you're talking about that 10%, if you're doing $10 million online, plan on spending about $1 million. Try to cap it around $1 million. If you're spending more than that, unless you're trying to hyper grow, which we're not really talking about right now, you really shouldn't be spending more than $1 million. If you're doing $50 million online, you really shouldn't be spending more than $5 million. And if you're brand new, there's still a floor, and that floor I like to think of is about 2 full-time employees on your operations. If you could get the equivalent of about 320 hours of work, and you're brand new, you're maybe running a couple of orders a day, 2 full-time employees should be able to do a good job, as long as those 2 full-time employees are trained and they know what they're doing. So about 320 hours worth of work in terms of getting really lean, handling some of your support tickets, looking at the analytics, understanding what your customers are asking about, is a good rule of thumb if you're just getting started out. If you have more questions on that, go ahead and send them in the Q&A, or you can send us an email afterwards, and we can kind of break down what that 320 hours gets spent on. But if you're just getting started, that's where I would imagine it. Otherwise, it's that 10% rule is a pretty good rule of thumb. All right, so that's the operational piece. On the customer piece, I want to go back to this concept that I don't think you need to launch to all customers at once. I like to think about doing some sort of design thinking here and doing a little bit of segmentation on your customers. Some really what we call low fidelity segmentation. That means you don't have to go out and buy a new BI platform, business intelligence platform. I think you can just take a look at your revenue. You should know your customers relatively well. And here's an example. You could say, okay, who are all my highest spending customers, right? You just look at their revenue, and then try to get a sense of what is my cost to service that revenue? How much do I have to spend? Are they really easy, or do they take a lot of work? And I think we all know what that means. And what a lot of work means is very different for every company. So you got to answer that. But look at the guys that spend a lot with you, but don't require a lot of work. Then also look at the guys that spend a lot with you that require a lot of work. And then the other side, look at the people that don't spend a lot with you and don't require a lot of work, and that don't spend a lot with you, but require a lot of work. You might not want those customers in the first place, but that's a different story. So I would recommend that you draw that, and you'll have a Venn diagram, and in the intersection, you're going to have people that spend a decent amount with you and don't require a lot of work, but don't require no work. Those are the guys that you want to go to e-commerce. That would be a phenomenal first place to start. Whatever that segment is, that cross-section is the right place to start. And you have honest conversations with them and say, hey, look, we've got this place. You can now go online. You can quote. You can take orders. You'll get pricing. You'll be able to place an order. All that stuff can happen really fast. But I don't recommend going to all customers at once. Do a rollout plan, because B2B is not like B2C. You guys have very, very unique aspects to your business. And I think those unique aspects of the business need to be really, really respected. So start at that middle section and then learn from them and then grow it out. All right. And then when we're talking about building a Rolls Royce, you start with a frame. When you're talking about building your e-commerce experiences, you don't have to roll out everything. This is probably the number one thing that frustrates the B2B community. And I think a lot of it has to do with misinformation, that there's this fear that if you don't get everything that you want up front, you'll never get it. And that's because we all come from implementing ERP solutions, and we all come from implementing HCM solutions and these large back office financial behemoths. And once you go live after being late by 2 years, you feel like, okay, there's no appetite to work on this. So if I didn't get it that first time, I'm not going to get it again. That's not how e-commerce should work. E-commerce should work now is that a lot of these companies are really starting to roll out really, really excellent solutions that you can launch with, that have a lot of what you need, but just not everything that you want. But they have a lot of what you need. I think you need to start there. And that's why we were talking about, taking it all in context. We talked about operations, but then we talked about your customers. Look at that middle customer set, and I think you'll be surprised that if you really just gave them what they need, you're actually starting off at a pretty good spot. And so what you need is you need a basic buy flow so people can find your products and add it to a cart. They can take a payment. For many of us, in case your pricing is too custom, you won't be able to launch all this customized pricing in 2 weeks. So what you do is then, instead of taking an order, you take a quote. So you should be able to take a quote. And if they're submitting a quote, or if they're submitting an order, you need to be able to show the receipt and show the invoice. And you also want to be able to answer questions. So whether it be, having a chat, or just simply linking to an email or showing a phone number where they can call you, that should be there as well. That's your basic kind of get off the ground e-commerce solution. And it might sound easy, and thanks to a lot of what these companies are doing, it now kind of relatively is. So let's talk about that shift to rapid ROI. So if you're going to want to launch in 2 weeks, here's the deal. You're going to want to look for an enterprise class platform. And when I say that, it's because of the fact that you're going to want something that you don't need to, you don't want to have to re-platform, but also you're going to be able to get great prices right now on these platforms, and it's something that I encourage you to look at. So if you're going to launch in 2 weeks, you have to not only get one of these great platforms, but here's the big difference. You're going to want a platform that has templates that you can leverage, right? So now, and a lot of people don't know this, either through the company themselves or through third parties, you can buy ready-to-go storefront templates, which is a lot more than just a UI. It has all the functionality tie-in to the back-end e-commerce platform. And so these templates have those key B2B features out of the box that you need, so that your customers can intuitively understand what they need to do, they need to quickly navigate. And because these template designers have thought through all the use cases, and they typically have multiple B2B customers, they're constantly evolving. So you may have heard about these templates or something similar from companies like Shopify or WooCommerce, right? These B2C platforms, and it's true. They're the ones that really pioneered this concept of these ready-to-go storefronts. They're a little bit different in that B2B has a lot more complex use cases, right? You might have different companies that have different prices, and you might have different companies that have different type of arrangements and shipping deals and these purchase size agreements. And so you need to be able to handle all those. But these templates now allow you to rapidly launch. And that would be, I think, the big differentiator than just 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you would not be able to work with any of these large platforms and get a templated website that's legitimately good rolled out in 2 weeks. Now I'm seeing a lot of it. I'm seeing a lot of great third-party templates that can really focus in on either a buy flow. I've seen both buy flow side templates where they're really focused on experience, and I've also seen self-service type templates so that customers can log in and just service their needs, like pay invoices, understand what their orders are, reorder, take a look and open service tickets, etc. So look for an enterprise e-commerce platform that has that is web services enabled, microservices enabled, and that is in the cloud, so that you don't need to worry about all the hosting and deployment costs, and you won't be able to do it in 2 weeks. Great examples. We love Commerce Tools. They've done a great job. ElasticPath, especially with their new Molten acquisition, and they have their multi-tenants, done a great job. Oracle has a really strong solution with the Oracle Commerce Cloud. Salesforce, with their purchase of CloudCraze, has done a really good job as well. So the Salesforce Commerce Cloud. So these 3, 4, 5 e-commerce vendors have done a great job of building out multi-tenant web services enabled platforms, which allow templates to sit on top of them. You might not be able to do this with some of those more monolithic locked-in platforms. So that's why I'm mentioning these that we've seen, that we worked on, that have some really good ratings with the analysts, etc. So pick the right template, pick the right e-commerce platform, and if the e-commerce platform is the right one, you'll know that because it can work with almost any front-end template. It can work with almost any front-end CMS, any search. It's all modularized. And there's a lot here. I don't want to go too deep into the technicals. Again, you can ask questions on the chat, or you can just email me after, and I'm happy to walk you through the kind of technical pieces behind it. But rest assured, the cool thing is it requires very little maintenance from a technology perspective, and it requires very little setup time. And this is what it kind of looks like. So if you're going to be launching in 2 weeks, what you're really talking about is a balance between features, back-end operation, and time. And so this is what I mean. Typically, your e-commerce solution is going to need a product, right? So people can buy something. It's going to need your inventory, so you don't sell stuff that you don't have. You're going to want to be able to take a payment. You're going to need to be able to calculate taxes. You're going to need to be able to get the orders into your ERP. You're going to need to get the orders out to your fulfillment centers. And you're going to want to make sure that the customers that are buying are actually your customers. All right. So in that 2 week store, that first column here, you should really expect that most of this stuff is going to require some sort of Excel upload or manual keystroke entry. You're not going to be able to build in integrations in such a fast time. But that's okay, because again, we're focusing on a specific catalog set and we're focusing on a specific customer set. So you should imagine if you're launching in 2 weeks, you've got this template that looks great, you've got this e-commerce platform that's really powerful, and you're going to be uploading your catalog every night, and that's why you have those 2 FTEs, and you're going to be uploading your inventory every night through Excel. And so these are all Excel uploads, right? You just take an export, you format it, and then you upload it. It might be anywhere from 2 minutes worth of work to an hour. I recommend that you leverage a payment provider like Stripe. Sometimes if you have a payments processor already, building out integrations to custom payment processors can be time consuming. It takes 10 minutes to set up a Stripe account. Most companies already have pre-built integrations to these modern frameworks like Stripe, and you can get payments into the door this afternoon. So you go online, you set up your account. Most of these e-commerce platforms already have a Stripe integration, and you just collect that payment. Taxes are a little bit more involved, but most people have like an Avalara or something similar, and most big e-commerce platforms have already pre-connections to most major tax platforms. And then on getting the orders into your system, so you've collected an order, your customer's paid. How do you get that into your ERP and your fulfillment? Well, you get the order via some sort of secure email or a list at the end of the day, and you just manually key it in, just like what your call center is doing. So what you're really helping here is that you're taking off some of that call center load, and at the end of the day, you can just go and key it in. And it's not the best way of doing it, but it is much better than what we have today. Then what you can imagine is like in 6 weeks, right? 4 weeks later, you start prioritizing, well, what kind of stuff do I want to take the operational burden off of? And remember, it's that feature, automation, price balance, or not price, time balance. So instead of having an Excel upload for your catalog, maybe 4 weeks later, it's an automated import. Same thing with inventory and pricing. And then 10 weeks later, maybe now you've automated the export into your ERP and your fulfillment. So the key here, though, is if you taking it back from the beginning, where you talked about you're not really cutting the price of what it takes to do this, you're just breaking it up into incremental chunks, right? You can launch in 2 weeks in a really cost-effective manner, and then you can spend the next 4 weeks in getting your catalog, your inventory, and your pricing updated. Remember, the end user experience hasn't changed. They're still seeing product, they're still seeing inventory, and remember, success today is getting your customers the experience you want, not so much making sure that your employees don't have to manually do stuff in the back end. So the customer experience stays relatively uniform at a relatively high level. That's that bottom piece, that customer experience piece. They're getting the standard buy flow. They're seeing their login. They're able to place quotes, etc. And then 6 weeks later, they're still seeing that stuff. All that's changed in the back end is you've automated some of the back end operations. 10 weeks later, they're also seeing the same stuff still, and you've now automated everything. And if you want, you can invest even further, and maybe you can add features, right? You can add invoice payments, so they can come in and pay old invoices that maybe even invoices that weren't done online. Maybe they can look at all their previous orders, so not just look at the orders that they placed online, but look at all the orders that they placed across any channel with them. Maybe there's like a quick order form. I mean, the options are endless. The beautiful thing about these e-commerce platforms from Commerce Tools, EP, Oracle, and Salesforce is that they allow really a lot of customization. But I recommend you leverage a template so that you kind of put gates and firewalls on your ambitions and your team's ambitions to do too much and then blow up the cost. So these templates are relatively affordable. I've seen templates as low as $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, which relatively to what these things used to cost in the hundreds of thousands to millions is super affordable now. So you can probably get a template that's really good in that $20,000 to $30,000 range. You can get more lighter templates for a little bit cheaper, and then whatever you negotiate with commerce platform, you do, and then you launch these things really, really quickly, and then you layer on. All right, so that's it. That's really what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I wanted to share about the challenges. So I really think what we need to be doing is we need to be taking a look at right-sizing the experiences we deliver, right-sizing which customers we launch with, and then making sure that we've got operations handled. And then I wanted to share with you some of the more exciting things that some of these more modern platforms like Commerce Tools, EP, Oracle, Salesforce, and some others are doing to help you launch quickly. If you want to email us to ask more questions, b2b@objectx.com. You can also email me directly at rohit.garawal@objectx.com. we've got a ton of great blogs that you can read at objectedge.com. You can follow us on Twitter, or you can follow me on Twitter. We're always putting out information. And I can't emphasize this enough. We're really doing this, and we threw this together in the last 3-4 days just because we've been hearing so much from so many customers and people in the industry that's like, gosh, I'm stuck. This is really a no obligation thing. I mean, we know a lot of people right now, CapEx and OpEx is really crunched. So if you have some questions, I mean, you don't have to worry about being sold to. Just give us a call. We're happy to give you 10 to 15 minutes of our time to answer some questions that you might have. No obligations, or we're all good guys over here and gals, and we're just looking for ways that we can also help. So thank you for spending your time with us today. If you have any questions, please do email us, and I look forward to hearing from some of you and hopefully getting to help some of you guys out. Thank you.